Alright, I've had some requests to take a look at a couple of people from Supernatural. First of all, I do want to point out to people how important it is to be careful when researching, as there are images like this one that Photoshop people's heads onto other people's bodies. Obviously, transvestigating someone based on someone else's body would be less than ideal. Today's video is on Jensen Ackles. I took special care with this person because he has a few tricky features to the body, even though my instincts immediately tell me this is a female. As a child, I can recognize a gentle female energy, and it remained as the person matured. There is such a thing as a pretty boy, but this is a pretty girl. She has a low-key, mild look about her, a female energy in the gaze. Her shoulders slope a little, which is more common on girls, but children may exhibit odd skeletal traits while maturing. The facial features are closely spaced, the features delicate, the face oval, the forehead short, all common on females. This is probably one of the prettiest girls I've ever seen, to be honest. Softness to the face. Looks like there's a bit of a widow's peak, which is more common on girls, and yes, a slope to the shoulders even when older. Males can have sloped shoulders, it's just uncommon, and usually it's resultant from built-up muscle more than caused by the skeletal structure itself, as with females. Could just be the lighting, or we could be seeing discoloration of the hands, not uncommon in females taking testosterone. There is a brow ridge and female spacing to the features. A male making this expression would still have a much more focused, intense look in the eyes. The energy of either gender's spirit is not something that can be hidden. Over many years, testosterone can lengthen the lower half of the face, grow the nose, strengthen facial features, and grow a brow ridge. Still, this face looks very feminine. The hands and the wrists look delicate, as do the ears. Pretty small mouth, rather close-set eyes, and closely spaced features. All female. It does look like there's some discoloration on the hands. Soft appearance to the body, even though the individual is slim, resultant from high levels of subcutaneous body fat, a trait many FTMs exhibit by virtue of being biologically female. Looks like there's a lot of width going on down here around the hips. Again, the expression in the face can't alter the energy in the eyes, that essential energy telling us what gender this person's eternal spirit is. Soft look in the eyes, softness to the face, softness in the arms, neck, everywhere. Humerus bone is looking pretty short. Males' arms tend to be longer than females. But this feature does vary from individual to individual, and I would never decide someone's gender just based on the length of their arm. The torso, the back, the hips, the thighs are kind of more important than the arms, because those are traits that play into childbearing more so than the arms. See how the chest appears weak and shrunken in, not broad to match the width of the shoulders? Classic FTM body. Real men with developed pectorals don't have everything on their chests so centrally located, and don't have such small rib cages. There's a clear dip in the torso right here, above the navel, which is where the natural female waist indentation points should lie. This FTM's body has done better than some in distributing fat gained in a more male way, filling in the torso a bit more than we see on some that retain a very obvious hourglass figure. Still, the hips are looking mighty wide. Pretty small rib cage, small chest, and a wide lower torso. What looks like a spinal tilt, even though the pelvis here is tilted forward, it looks like the spinal tilt begins around here. Waist height. Does look like we have those discolored hands. The posterior looks abnormally high for a man who supposedly is the height this person is, which does suggest the torso is short, which is not typical for male proportions, where torsos are typically longer. Looks like a little curve here to the lower abdomen, indicating a female spinal tilt. Again, short humerus bones. The chest looks strangely empty and weak, with bunching and pointing that simply shouldn't be happening on what is apparently a slim male. Energy in the eyes looks like that lost, dead FTM energy. That energy is even more disturbing here. Again, note the width to the hips, the dip at the waist, the flaring out after that point, the strange appearance of the little chest. Even on testosterone, she looks so feminine. Looks like we've got a little brow ridge, but still in line with possible brow ridges in Caucasian females, to be honest. Females do have brow bones as well, just typically not as pronounced as in males. This is the truth with all facial features in any given population. Typically, males' features will be larger and more extreme. This is a good example of high cheekbones and a fairly strong facial structure on a girl, as the higher subcutaneous fat levels make the face still appear quite soft. A male of this body size and with a similar facial structure would likely have a gaunter, sharper look to the face than we see here, and his collarbones would be much more visible. Again, look how the chest looks all gathered, low and in the middle, and how there is no clear division between the pectoral and the region beneath it. Males who are slim and build muscle usually have much more definition around this area, but females struggle to develop pectoral muscle, and higher subcutaneous fat levels mean they tend to have this doughy, softer look than natural males. Look at how the hips continually grow wider after that high point, where the small upper torso narrows a little at the waist. As mentioned, this FTM's torso did fill out more than some FTMs do, but still, that essential female shape is visible because that's what the bones are doing under the hormonally altered flesh. Does look like there's a little bit of curve to the spine. Neck looks quite short, more common on females. I've mentioned this before, but often when seen standing or walking from the side, FTMs will have this awkward look about them that is due to having the pelvic tilt, meaning it looks like they're bending a little forward compared to a natural man whose body line tends to head straight down from the side. So on FTMs, they're kind of leaning forward. It's all about female curves, and that pelvic tilt and fuller hips and posterior don't look right on a body that's allegedly male. Now, the arms would naturally angle out at this elbow. You can see they're already beginning to do that up here. But I think this person is consciously aware of how female that looks, and so they angle the elbows back inward. Natural male arms tend to hang down from the shoulder, and female arms angle outward to accommodate wider hips. And if an FTM thinks about it, they can easily change the way they move for the camera. Now, this person also has bow legs, so it would be easy to incorrectly assess the legs as straight and male. However, they're not, and I'll do my best to point that out in future slides as well. Arm length does appear female, with crotch level reaching to the palm, and not the wrist. Arm length varies according to ethnicity and bloodline, but typical females' arms are more like this. Because of built-up shoulder muscles and fat being distributed in a more male pattern, the dimensions at a glance don't appear female. However, if we check where the joints actually are in the shoulders, here and down here in the hips, looks like the shoulders are possibly just a little wider than the hips, or possibly equal. Both are acceptable dimensions on females, and sometimes you do find women from the north of Europe and in Scandinavia who have this body type. Now we can clearly see the roundness to this person's hips, caused by a wide female pelvis. Also, if one imagines a correction to these bow legs, they stick out right here, the female Q angle does become evident. You can see that there's the curve here, and if the leg continued inward following that line, it would be a female Q angle. Same on this side too, if kind of bumped this knee inward, the leg curves. The arms are angling outward to accommodate these wide hips. He's posing here, obviously, but it does show us a curvier female spine and that awkward FTM tilt to the body I've been talking about. Males really do look straight up and down from the side unless they've got health or posture issues, but FTMs tend to look like there's that little tilt because of the natural female curves to the body. The spine definitely looks female here. Follow the line, discolored hands. Digit ratio looks male, that is, ring finger longer than index. A percentage of females have this trait as well, and actually I've seen numerous FTMs with it. This may be one of the traits that can be influenced by flooding the womb with testosterone when they know they've got a girl developing in it. Personally, I have doubts as to how much hormone treatments in the womb can achieve. The skeleton, at least, is always going to be the gender coded for in DNA, and I think the same of the reproductive organs, until they get to those through surgeries and possibly swap things up. And I think they want us to believe they're more able to play God than they really are in terms of DNA splicing and so forth. The truth is that gender and DNA is very simple, as designed by God who works in light and order, and any transgendering done by the other side has to be done in a messy, disorganized, painful manner, through procedures and treatments to twist and mutilate a perfectly healthy, normal, functional body. I also don't believe people can be born with female DNA but male reproductive organs, or the opposite for males, as some people on here are being led to believe. That simply doesn't make sense. The DNA is what codes for the development of those parts, not just a wash of hormones flooding through the fetus. Do the elite have better procedures for transgendering than they allow the regular populace access to? That's likely, that makes sense. But I'll maintain that a male skeletal structure means the person is male with male DNA and reproductive organs and vice versa for females. They can do whatever they will to the flesh through treatments and surgeries, but that body is still always going to naturally want to develop into the gender it was born to be, even if the womb was flooded with too great an amount of the primary hormones of the opposite gender during development. The elite do have complex deceptions, but the catch is that they have to work with the creations of God, as they do not have the same creative power as he does. Their works will always be hack jobs of masterpieces, unskilled edits of something with a perfect balance. But in summary, the digit ratio is one thing that could feasibly be influenced by flooding the womb with testosterone while a girl develops in it, seeing as a boost in testosterone levels during male fetal development is what supposedly causes it in males. See how we can see the widest part of the hips here is just right at the crotch level? Imagine correcting the bow legs, and that curve would naturally come down from here where it begins, inward. It would be an acute female Q angle. I've said this before too, but girls can be tall. I've known some girls who are about 6 feet tall. Typically, people who have this kind of height have ancestry from Scandinavia, Germany, or elsewhere in Northern Europe. Jensen Ackles, as with many Americans, has Irish, Scottish, English, and German ancestry. Now, it's also been suggested that in addition to testosterone and at times steroids, FTMs are given human growth hormone. Human growth hormone can increase a child's final height by up to 7 inches. So, even if Jensen Ackles really is 6'1", it's possible she naturally would have been about 5'7", but was given human growth hormone to influence her overall height. There are risks in using human growth hormone. Perhaps this child's body couldn't cope with the extra growth, and the legs responded by bowing or bowing under the pressure. A recognized side effect of human growth hormone usage is joint pain, and it's known to have caused skeletal aberrations in young users. Chest looking small and shrunken compared to the shoulders, which is again weird if this person were really male. Joints in the shoulders and the hips, they're about equal. Yeah, the shoulders do look pretty wide in terms of being able to probably fit 3 head widths on. But when someone is really tall, even a female, she tends to be broader as well, to balance out the entire body. Fingers are looking pretty delicate. Body looking like it's got female levels of subcutaneous fat. This looks a little bit weird, but I'm pretty sure it's him. It has the same weird chest, with bits pointing in directions they shouldn't be, flat in some parts, hollow-looking in some parts, gathered in others, unlike a real male pectoral that actually looks broader and evener. It's all about that hip width. Those are absolutely female hips. They continue from that little blip, you see, where you can see that female indentation point above the navel. Continual expansion. Past that point, all of the pictures. See this wideness to the pelvis. It's not just oblique muscles, because down here where the legs are, the hips, everything, it stays wide. Tiny upper torso, large lower torso, female. Same again. If a male had a bulge here, and it were just the external oblique muscle, the hips wouldn't continue out wider past that point. We're seeing that happen here because the hips are female, because the person is female. Weak little chest, round shape to the hips, all around the navel height. Can follow it through the appearance of the shadow as well as the lines here. Shoulders look wide here because they're held forward in this pose, while the hips are being tilted away. This leg is farther back, this one is forward. Some FTMs know how to hide their female dimensions for the camera. Still, the torso is short, the pelvis is wide, and the hip shape here is very round looking. Forehead does look like it has a bit of a slope, jaw does look strong, the facial traits do look pronounced, including the ear size at this age. Looks like there's a brow ridge and prominent cheekbones. But again, testosterone can increase the appearance of the strength of the facial traits, and a lot of FTMs that were shown in the media seem to be selected from bloodlines that have more masculine women to begin with, or women with stronger facial traits. Facial hair can also be grown through testosterone use, and not every FTM grows a beard well. Ackles does pretty well. If we were only judging by skulls, Ackles might get a pass as an extremely beautiful man. This is why it's risky to judge by the skulls and not the bodily traits, because testosterone really can change a female face and make it look possibly masculine. However, the bodily traits related to the ability to bear children or not are the primary traits we've got to focus on, and the rest are supplementary in coloring in the picture. The important ones are hip to shoulder ratio, Q angle, spinal arch. Yet passable in some shots, but again with that girly vibe, and higher subcutaneous fat levels than thin males usually have. She's got that chin to neck slope, caused by retained fat in the face, creating a softer look around the jaw, very common on females. Trachea looks thickened, but there doesn't seem to be much in the way of an Adam's apple. Testosterone can grow one in FTMs, but in most cases we don't see much of one. Looks like the ratio is about even here. This finger's bent a little bit downwards, so. The feet don't look really large, and the shape of them looks quite female. Males often have bulkier, bonier looking feet, but there's a kind of more tapered, smooth appearance to these feet, like the hands. Again, discoloration on the hands. She's posing again here and puffing out the stomach, but look at that high arch in the spine, begins here. Males who bend in this way won't have such a sudden, pronounced directional change beginning from here, because their original spine shape is straight all the way down. Females, on the other hand, already have an arch at this point, so when they bend their back it looks more extreme, like we see here. See that arch up there again? The width to the hips. Round shape, both sides. Round shape to the hips under a female waist. Definite female hourglass shape, every one of these shots. Round, wide hips. Short-looking arms. Smaller ribcage compared to broader hips. And there it is, the spinal arch. Visible at various angles. You can see in every one of these shots. Spinal arch at the high waist point. After seeing the arch of the spine out of clothing, it should be easy to recognize those shapes underneath it. Again, this person's body has really filled out as she aged, so fat has gone to the waist and made the torso look less obviously female. That's affecting the look of the back from this angle too. However, we can still see a pelvic tilt. You can see there's a curve to the abdomen here that comes inward a little bit. See also the gradual curve of the leg from the calf down to the ankle. Typical female lower legs. Males tend to have less fat around the ankles, so they have a straighter look lower down, and then the visible calf muscles up higher, but on females the line tends to be gradual coming down. When not posing, but moving naturally, this person's spinal arch is frequently visible, unsurprisingly. Short torso, long legs. Does look like an Adonis belt, but I think they contour them into the fat of the FTMs. There are procedures where a form of very precise liposuction is employed by a cosmetic surgeon, and it can create the illusion of abdominal muscles and other muscles, so why not an Adonis belt too? Makes sense. Weird pose, but the female pelvic tilt is still there. We can see that the spine is curved from directly behind too, and that the hips are too round on both sides for a regular male. The bow legs again create the illusion of a straighter leg. We can see the widest pelvic point is right at the crotch, like typical on females, and if the legs were fixed, the thighs would curve inward. Such a feminine expression too. There's that roundness, the pointedness, incorrect chest shape, not the same on both sides. Waist indentation points high up here, wide pelvis, roundness to this whole shape, showing that there's plenty of space in there for holding a baby. The arms do angle out from the shoulders, even though this person seems to try to correct it by bending the arm inward at the elbow. Women, if you hold your arms out of this angle, the palms should face more forward, and that's because that would be the natural way the arms would hang out. But on this woman, she knows it's going to look more female if she does that, so she's trying to make it hang straight down by rotating it from that point, and also frequently holding them in front of the legs instead of beside them. And those hands do look discolored. It's just undeniable female hips. Visually assessing FTM midsections is extremely important, and there's not a specific trick to it, just being able to recognize a female shape that shouldn't be there. Shrunken in chest on a small rib cage, and big hips. Short, small neck. Again, that incorrect torso. Here we can also see there's great width around the hips. Wide across, you can see it. If you follow the natural curve, you can see that it comes in right here. It's a curvy female body there. Hip to shoulder ratio looking pretty female. Again, this person's shoulders are fairly wide, but there are girls who have these kind of dimensions. And if you put someone on hormone blockers, and their body reacts as well to the introduced hormones as well as this person's does, so they don't develop any fat gain in a real female way around the hips and things, then, the hips are going to look a little narrower. The pelvis still just too wide looking for a man. Even if the shoulders are quite wide too, the pelvis is wide. And here you've got that wide point at the crotch level where the Q angle begins, and it should come inward if we didn't have those bow legs. Even though this person might look a little bit out of shape because of the higher subcutaneous body fat, she actually has worked out the back to increase its apparent width, and the deltoids to increase the apparent shoulder width too. Still, the truth lies in the pelvis, and the pelvis is unusually wide to be male. We can tell that the spine is curving under there, and we can visually follow a curve along the thighs too. Both thighs have a curve, which would create our acute female Q angle if it was tilted inward instead of the legs being bowed outward, as it should be. Same here, skeletally sloping shoulders as well. Same here with that obvious curve to the thigh, just the angle doesn't look the same because the knee is pushed outward. Feet do look bigger here, maybe she wears shoes too big for her, maybe she actually does have big feet, I don't know. Wide pelvis, narrow chest. Again, we can see the curve the leg still developed, even though it formed wrong around the knee. Short arms, and the same with the arms intentionally being angled from the elbow. Same with the legs, everything. Here as well. Keep an eye out and see the curve to the thighs. Even when bow-legged, we can still tell these are female legs. Curvy shapes, curvy shapes. Unlike these legs that look very male, it's just a bulky quadricep here, but the actual leg here looks very male. Small pelvis on this person, wide pelvis on this person. The face does look like it's been lengthened through the use of testosterone. The body has filled out to be less feminine. Muscle has been grown, as has a beard, and so forth. But this person's true gender is undeniable. There's female energy in these eyes always, and numerous female traits. Again, the discoloration of the hands. Gentle glow coming from the girl in the photo, and a piercing burn coming from the boy. But the trick is that the girl is the boy and the boy is the girl. Don't get too hung up on skull sizes. Some people focus on this as the gold standard, but honestly, it isn't. Sometimes FTMs have strangely large heads, like this guy here. Look, that's a large head. But like I said, the bodily traits related to childbearing are the real tells. Everything else can be a little warped by hormones, but those core skeletal traits seem to be unalterable. Because whether you want to call it God or just, natural biology, the body is going to develop into what it was designed to do. Because if you have a female develop without the ability for her spine to arch and bend during pregnancy, without the female Q angle, all these things that allow for a woman to bear children, she's going to be crippled. She'll just die if she gets pregnant. And if a male was born with a female skeletal structure, he would be weaker. He wouldn't be able to lift heavy things. The male pelvis, narrow pelvises, are optimized for forward locomotion. Actually, the female pelvis, if it was any wider, we would not be able to walk with pelvises as wide as the typical human female's pelvises. It's very inefficient for athleticism. So we really are designed for our primary purpose, for males hunting, fighting, for females bearing children. And you're not going to be born with the wrong skeleton, it's just not going to happen. It's kind of sad. She's exhibiting a gentle, nurturing female vibe, while there is also a very lost, dead look in the eyes. And again, that awkward FTM forward tilt, which is always due to the spinal arch coming out, which we can see here. Wouldn't look awkward if we knew it was a female, because that's a normal look for females, but on a man, that's pretty weird. High female spinal arch. Female looking posterior. She was so obviously female when younger, she would have been a striking woman. Even after years on testosterone, that essential femininity remains, and there's a softness despite the strength of the features. That lost FTM look is visible here too. Undeniable female energy. I was going to leave it there, but actually while researching this person I came across photos of his children, and I thought they were worth talking about. Now I don't know exactly how these people reproduce. Surrogates or relatives from the same bloodlines, kept natural gendered for breeding purposes so the offspring look like the famous people, would be my guesses. When I saw this photo I thought, oh, a girl and a boy. Then I found out that's not the official story. And so in my opinion, it seems Jensen has continued this cycle of religious abuse with his own children. Look at the gentle, open energy of the little girl on the left compared to the more focused, intense energy of the little boy on the right. Even in babies, it's still possible to discern the gender of the spirit through cues given in the eyes, the windows to the soul. Anyone who's had a baby or looked after babies will likely notice that the left one really looks like a boy. It's hard to describe, but the demeanor comes across as more male. The amount of hair on the head is more typical of a male baby as well. That is undeniably a crying little boy wearing girl's clothes. And a beautiful little girl being raised as a boy. Look at the different expressions these two are exhibiting to the same input. This is essential body language that differs between the genders, and once you know what to look for in terms of expressions, movements, and so forth, it becomes so obvious. Males and females really do express themselves differently, and it's something visible even in toddlers. And the older girl in the back, that is obviously a boy. Jensen the mother, and her 2 sons and 1 daughter here. And the older girl has more male traits already. Long forehead, though many children do have longer foreheads they later grow into. Wide-spaced eyes, quite wide mouth, and a broader nose. More exaggerated features are common on boys. This is a very pretty boy, but it does look like a boy. Both of them. And this boy is so obviously a girl. Close-spaced eyes, smaller mouth, etc., but it's the collection of all those minute details plus the energy that makes this little girl so obviously a little girl. Jensen looks very much like a woman here, even though her face has been altered. And isn't it interesting how even comparing an adult female to a baby male, there is a distinct difference between the energy in the eyes. The little boy has an intense focus in the eyes, and Jensen's eyes are mild and gentle in comparison. Looking between these 2 sets of eyes is astonishing in how clear the different energies of these 2 people are. And again here. And neither of them look happy. Not surprising. Let me just pose my thoughts about the why these people continue the cycle of abuse. Simply put, Stockholm Syndrome. To cope with the profound abuse these people are raised in, they come to see things the way their abusers see it. If a child that has been forced transgendered is taught that it is now basically a god for having aspects of both genders, as in their Gnostic faith, then it can convince itself that it wasn't actually abuse at all, and will think that doing the same to the next generation is actually a kindness. Then the act of actually doing this to the next generation is a trap, reinforcing to the victim, who has become the perpetrator, that the abuse inflicted on them was okay, and also making it doubly hard for them to ever recognize consciously that it wasn't, because if they allowed themselves to see it once they've already inflicted the same abuse on another, the mental anguish they would feel at not only their own personal loss, but at having done the exact same evil to an innocent being that trusted them as they trusted their abuser would be basically unimaginable. This is one possibility. Abuse is something that tends to go on in cycles and patterns generationally, even when it's not logical to outside observers for that to happen. The cycle of spouse and child battery, for example, and alcoholism is more familiar to people as something that the next ill-adjusted generation picks up to cope with their damaged psyche. It's essentially the same logic as with the forced gender inversion. Then there is also the possibility that it is contractually required to transgender their children in these inverted bloodlines in order to continue to have success and be accepted in the cult, and presented well in the media. As far as maintaining their silence on these things, it could be because of the reasons I already specified, or that they have to swear solemn oaths as is common in secret societies, typically on one's life. Or it could be actual threats, drugging, and handling by others to keep them in line. Some possibilities. Personally, I believe it's primarily Stockholm Syndrome, and that people underestimate the harrowing, destructive effect that an unimaginable abuse like forced transgendering would have on the mind. These people are forced to shun their true identity, and every day they live is an essential psychological suicide where they reject their natural gendered spirit and play a part, living a lie, living inside a mutilated, drugged body. It's unfathomably cruel, and victim becomes perpetrator time after time. I wish there was a more positive note I could end this on, but this is the reality of this grim, gruesome subject. My opinion is that Jensen Ackles is a female-to-male transgender forced into this state as a child, and she is cooperating with the androgynous agenda to do the same to the next generation. And that's that.